This week then we're going to continue to explore our fashion theme by working in the studio or on Zoom with a model. And I thought it would be good to maybe take some ideas from the approaches to drawing that fashion designers take. And so when people come to the studio on Monday, I'm going to give them some newsprint. And we will have our model posing for us. I have some photographs of my fashion model wife. And I'm going to encourage people to work in this sort of a way. So putting down... Actually, I've been reading up on how to draw like a fashion designer. And some of the emphasis seems to be on, obviously, the clothing, the fall of the clothing and the flow of the garment and so on. So I will encourage people to take a pastel, work with the side of it, and get something of the shape of the garment. And then because I've got a nice interesting pose to work with here as well, I'll just carry on a little bit longer with my side of pastel to get something of the head and the arms, even a bit of leg. So some shapes like that, which always flow quite nicely with the side of the pastel. And then I'm going to give everyone a fibre tip and get them just to draw into these pastel shapes. So I think one of the things that characterises this style of drawing is, as I've already said, a kind of economy. And I think to try and approach where you don't lift your fibre tip off the paper, but you let it just flow around. I've put down some shapes in pastel, but I'm not sticking to those shapes now as I understand the pose a little bit better. But I am trying to work in a completely fluid way. It's one single flowing line. I draw into some of the pastel and place my lines somewhere different if I've changed my mind. And I think I might go a little bit further with the head and the hair and get something like that. So a single flowing line. I would smudge that a bit. Quite nice to work it in, and I think I could actually go a bit further with some of this colour, using it to strengthen the tone, slide it around with the drawing, and maybe just as one addition, because part of the economy is to keep things simple, but it might be quite nice to have something dark to distinguish the hair, and also to be able to take an eraser and draw back into some of those pastel shapes. Perhaps get a sense of light. That's not always characteristic of these fashion drawings. But this is a nice economical way of working. And if we get our model to perhaps move and now and then hold some poses, I think there'll be a good opportunity to introduce these fluid and dynamic approaches to drawing. And then I think, as I say, it can be optional whether you think in terms of light and shade. So with the first one I started with colour shapes, the side of the pastel. This time I think I'll try starting with the line. I'm not sure that works so well for me, but I think I'll get you to try both of these. And if you're just working on Zoom or using a recording of the model session, then I'd suggest you try both approaches. So this time I'm starting with the line. What I always find is that I probably do more lines. So, I think there can be less economy. But again, it's just quite good to vary the approaches. And you might find there's a different kind of virtue in this approach. So fewer, I'd say less confident lines. And that might be the point at which to then get a bit of colour on. I think I'm again trying to use the dynamism of the clothing, the flow of the clothing, to get something dynamic into the drawing. And if I add the charcoal, I could have tried something different actually. Maybe something a bit warmer. But when people work in the studio, and if you're doing this on Zoom at home or working with the recording, I'd certainly encourage you to work quickly. We'll have our model move and then I think hold a pose mid-walk and then see what that generates for people. So the aim will be very much fluidity and economy, and by limiting your materials just to 1 or 2 colours and the line, I think that will help force the economy. And this is the sort of drawing that I think yields some successes and some failures. And that's fine, because it's only really by putting yourself somewhere new and having the failures as well as the successes that you discover something that can be then brought into this process. If you're working on some sort of idea with the fashion theme, there will hopefully be things which emerge from this particular activity. Maybe something to do with movement, maybe something to do with economy, maybe something you just didn't anticipate, which can then be fed into your particular angle. And you can see, because I've got a lot of pastel down, this marker isn't taking everywhere. I decided that I would correct that arm and move everything over a little bit and see if that would advance the drawing without making it too wide. But the time will be up, and so I'll just have to accept that drawing in the state that it gets to. But I think I've certainly found what works best for me is to put down the colour shapes and then work into them. Unless I was to get a lot more material on and, be able to, if it was a collage, I might stick something on and redraw. So there was a chance to redraw from a sort of fresh beginning point, and I might do that. So that's going to be the first approach that we'll try. And perhaps by way of contrast, I've been looking at and showing you on the email some of Vuillard's sketches, pastel and charcoal sketches, which a number of which are of his mother, who was a seamstress and so on, or images that I included on the email of various garment workers. And one thing that characterizes a lot of Vuillard's work, especially the later work actually, is this very kind of busy, textured, patterned work in paint. He used pastel for his drawings, but he also worked with distemper and oil paint, and produced these, in a way, incredibly busy paintings. And some of that busyness, I think, can be found in the drawings. And so what I'm wanting to work with a bit here is this continuous line, which is my way of getting this drawing started, making lots of lines, choosing a subject, like Inez working on a piece of sewing, which includes material with all its intricate pattern, but also the way that I draw her is going to have, it's got a huge foot, but anyway, it's going to have that kind of highly patterned quality to it. And I've got, for those of you working in the studio, we won't put in the horse, but we'll get some of our busy Victorian interior with a fireplace and pictures on the wall. So for those of you working in the studio, as well as thin bits of charcoal like this, I've also got some sheets of, it's a kind of orange sugar paper. I hope it's not too orange, but something that I see a lot in Vuillard's work is the way in which he, in his paintings and his drawings, will use the ground, the colour on which he starts the image, often forms a very important part of the final piece. And if I work here with charcoal on the orange sugar paper, and I think I'm going to just try and stay with line, because I think that can be quite revealing certainly of the effect of pattern and the kind of contours that line will generate. But as well as working with black lines, I'm also going to try some white chalk. And I've got a kind of cream colour as well. And not unlike what I was trying to do with the fashion drawings, I want to see what sort of economy I can bring into these drawings. I think part of it will inevitably be a certain amount of tonal filling in. So I'm going to restrict myself to some warm, but it could almost be like that three-colour drawing where if I work with black, brown and white, or maybe black, brown, white and cream, and I can start to use temperature as a way of distinguishing one area from another. Oh, maybe this material needs to get a bit more white on it. So this will be another way in which we're going to work, and because I'm restricting myself with colour, I'm going to need to work back into this drawing to gradually find more contrast and definition, to separate one part from another. And I can do that with my stick of thin charcoal on my orange paper. So we'll have hope our model not only doing fashion model poses, moving and stopping so that you can work with your felt tip marker and pastel, but also we're going to have the loan of a sewing machine, and I've got some mannequins and some material and costume and so on, so that she could perhaps do some dressmaker related poses. And you may well have had ideas yourselves about what else would work. And this will be certainly the second kind of approach to drawing that I'll be encouraging you to try. But there may be, as I say, other ideas with which you can also guide Hope in striking up different poses. And I know I've said I wouldn't use many colours, but I think it might be quite nice to get a little bit of yellow or something. But it'll be economy, it'll be all about economy and selection what dictates what you do and when. But I'm hoping this way of drawing will help you give some thought to pattern and texture. And again, that might feed into the way you think about the images that you're developing on this fashion theme. So I'll see you tomorrow.